Hey, grade nines. I was by the school, didn't realize that I'd have time to record, so I just popped in. Hope you don't mind that I'm a little bit more casual today. This video is essentially going to be very similar to the last one where I'm going to be giving you some definitions. In fact, we're going to talk about 3 of them and then maybe we'll look at an example if we get a chance to do so. What we're talking about is using populations to collect data, and this will conclude your lessons on probability and statistics. So the first thing we're going to look at is something called the population. Population is the group about which that you're collecting your information for. So essentially, it's the group that you're collecting data for. Literally, the definition. An example would be. So I'll give you 2 examples. One example would be if you were trying to find out if people preferred gas or electric cars, or to be more specific, to drive gas or electric cars. It wouldn't make much sense for the population to be selected to be high school students. Namely because not all of us drive just yet. For those of us that do drive, we don't have the options for electric or gas, or we might not have driven both before. So having us as the population doesn't really make sense. However, if we asked or we're trying to learn about whether students preferred in-class or online learning, well, then the high school students would be a perfect population to survey or to collect data from, because all of us have meaningful insight into the collection. Within our population, we have 2 different ways that we can collect data. One of them is a sample. Sample is very convenient. You take a small selected group from that population to represent everyone. So it's like if I took 10 grade 9s and asked the 10 grade 9s if we should have a final exam at the end of the year, and let's say 9 of these 10 students said that, yeah, we should have a final exam. Well, that means everyone is now writing a final exam. Surprise, I'm just kidding. But that's what a sample is. It takes a small piece that represents the entire population. On the other hand, you have something called a census. You might have heard of that word in your social studies class. The census is a collection from all members of the population. So same question, if I wanted to ask if you wanted to have final exams, I would have to speak or survey every single one of you until everyone had been accounted for. And that would be a census. So let's do some really quick examples just to try to understand what we can use the information for. I'm going to give you a situation. We're going to define what the population is, and then we're going to choose the best method of data collection, whether we should take a sample or a census. The first thing that I want to find out is how many grade 9s own an Apple product. In this case, my population is going to be all grade 9s. And the key here is that all grade 9s are accounted for. So that means that our data collection would have to be a census. It accounts for every single one. Now, what if you weren't sure? Well, you can always go back on your response and try to make sense of it, right? If I didn't choose a census, if I chose a sample to represent all grade 9s and whether or not they had an Apple product, well, let's say I took a sample of 10 students and said, hey, do you guys have Apple products? And 7 of them said yes. Well, then I'm saying that 70% of all my students in grade 9 have Apple products. This may or may not be true. It doesn't quite give me enough information. Now, to be fair, if I just wanted a general idea, sure, a sample would be okay. But a census is totally feasible to do. I could just talk to all of you and find out, and that would give us a general idea of whether you guys had Apple products or not. Our second example is going to be, let's say, how many houses in Winnipeg, Manitoba have basements? So our population could be a few things in this case. I'm saying houses in Winnipeg. I know the houses in Winnipeg aren't living things that give us an answer, but that's what we're interested in. We would need to speak to the residents of those houses, so technically that could also be a population. But I'm going to say houses in Winnipeg for now. And for data collection, we are going to use a sample. Just because it would be very difficult to speak to every single person in Winnipeg and ask them if they had a basement or not. But if we had a general idea, maybe, 10 houses from every community, still very difficult to do, but it gives a general idea, and we could make an assessment based on that information. So the main thing with populations collecting data, you have to make a judgment call on what information you want. If you want really specific information, you're probably going to want to do a census, but you have to remember that sometimes that's not possible. If that's not possible, then you have to go with a sample, and hopefully that's sufficient to get the information that you want from the data that you collect. I'll post some practice up so you can try some of those questions. There'll be an assessment coming up shortly, and then we'll move on to one of our last topics.